Okay, so I'm going to help you guys out by recording me doing homework 10.2. Now, starting off with trapezoids, we need to remember that our area is equal to 1/2 times the height times the sum of the bases. So, 1/2 times height, which is 16 they gave us, times the sum of the bases, which are 21 and 38. First thing I do is add 21 and 38. And I get 59, and then I'll be multiplying that by 16 and also 1/2. And I get an area of 472, and that would be in square inches. Number 2, doing the same thing. Area equals 1/2 times the height times the sum of the bases. So the height is 8.5. The bases are 9.7 and 24.3. Let me make sure I'm still recording this. Okay. And the bases, we get 34. And I'll be multiplying that by 8.5 and 1/2. And that equals 144.5 square centimeters. Doing the same thing, so it's going to be 1/2 times the height. In this case, this is our height. It's perpendicular to the base, times 9 times the sum of the bases, so 18 and 6. Add 18 and 6 and multiply by 9 and also 1/2. Which will get 108 square feet. Alright, so find the area of the trapezoid. Now this is a little bit weird because they didn't give us everything we need to know. So I'm going to turn this like I do so that the height is vertical. Now we don't know the height for this one, but we know that this is a right triangle. And we have 3 and 5. So this would be our C, this would be our B, and we don't know A. So I'm going to say A squared plus B, which is 3 squared, equals C squared, which is 5 squared. Solve for A. Suppose I can show you guys the whole steps. A squared is equal to 5 squared minus 3 squared. 5 squared is 25 minus 3 squared. That would be 25 minus 9, which is 16, which makes A the square root of 16, or 4. So we have a height of 4, and then the other side, this would be 6. So altogether, it is 9 on the base. From there, we do 1/2 times height times the sum of the bases. So the base on the bottom would be 6 and 3 would be 9, plus base 2, the top would be 6. The height is 4 as we found. Multiply it all by 1/2. Add 6 and 9. Then multiply by 4. Then multiply by 1/2, or divide by 2, however you want to think about it. But that will be 30 square feet. Cool. So number 9, we know this is going to be 6, So we have one base up here, we have the height, but we don't have the full second base. Now we realize this is a right triangle. This would be our C side, this would be our B, and this is an unknown A. So I'm going to say A squared plus B, which is 8 squared, is equal to 10 squared. A squared is equal to 10 squared minus 8 squared. And if you do 10 squared minus 8 squared, you get 36. So A would be 6. That's 6. The other part is 6. So the full base is 12. Plugging into 1/2 times height times base 1 plus base 2. 1/2 times height of 8 times the sum of the bases. Well, the bottom would be 12 plus base 2 would be 6 up on top. Add them together, multiply by 8, and multiply 1 by 1/2. And you get an area of 72 square meters. All right. Number 10 is a tough one. What you have to realize is that to be able to draw the, or when you draw the height in, right here, you have made a special right triangle with this angle being 60, this angle being 30, and then we have 90. Now, opposite the 30 side over here, that is going to be your smallest side. Opposite the 90-degree angle, your hypotenuse, that is going to be 2 times the smallest side. And then the height, or the opposite of the 60 side, would be s times the square root of 3. Now, if 2s equals 8, then s is equal to 4. And then to find this height right here, you take s, which would be 4 times the square root of 3. And I'm just going to leave it like that, 4 square root of 3. Okay, now I have my full base, 15 and 4. I have another base on top, and a height, 4 square root of 3. Plugging in, 1/2 times height times base 1 plus base 2. Height is 4 square root of 3. Base 1, the bottom would be 19. Base 2 would be 15. Add those up. I get 34. So it's 1/2 times 4 square root of 3 times 34. Now I can't multiply the square root of 3 yet, but I can multiply 1/2, 4, and 34 and see what I get. And I get 68. And then I still have the square root of 3. Can't do anything with it. And that's my area. And let me think about this, make sure I did everything right. This is a little bit tricky. And I made a big error going back. So if the whole thing would be 15, then this part would be 11, making this part 11. So I made a big error right there. So these should be actually 15 total on the bottom and 11 on top, making this a little bit different. 15 and 11 is 26. Then I'm going to redo this calculation, 1/2 times 4 times 26, see what I get. And that is 52 times the square root of 3. And that would be in square feet. area of the kite. So, area of a kite is equal to 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Diagonal 1, let's say going across. 8 and 8 is 16. Diagonal 2, going up and down, it would be 2 and 8, which would be 10. 1/2 times 8 times 10, or excuse me, times 16 times 10 would be 80 square inches. Number 12. 1/2 times diagonal 1, we'll say going side to side, that would be 2 and 4 would be 6. And then times diagonal 2, which would be 3 and 3 would also be 6. So 1/2 times 6 is 18 square meters. Okay, so area for number 13 is 1/2 times diagonal 1, which would be 8 total, times diagonal 2, which they told us was 6. And multiply those out, and you get 24 square feet. All right, so find the area of the rhombuses. We're using the same formula. Area is equal to 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Diagonal 1 is 60. Diagonal 2 is 40. Twenty and 20 is 40. 30 and 30 is 60. So multiply those out. You get 1,200 square feet. Do the same thing over here. So we have 8 and 8, but we don't know what these are. What we can do is look at this as a right triangle with an A side unknown, B side, and C side. So we have unknown A squared plus known B is 8 squared equals known C 10 squared. So I found that A right there is 6. 6 up there, 6 on the bottom. So 1/2 area equals 1/2 diagonal 1, side to side, 8 and 8 is 16. Times diagonal 2, up and down, 6 and 6 is 12. Multiply those out, and you get an area of 96 square inches. Number 16 is even tougher, but you realize with a rhombus, the diagonals bisect each other. So if the whole thing is 6 going up and down here, then this would be 3, and this would be 3, and then we can solve for these two by doing Pythagorean's theorem again. So you say x squared plus 3 squared equals 5 squared, and you will solve for x being 4. So this would be 4 and 4, meaning that the whole vertical diagonal is 6, as we knew, and the whole horizontal diagonal is 4 and 4, which would be 8. And the area is equal to 24 square meters. Okay, and I'm going to do this on the next page. Okay, so find the area of each trapezoid to the nearest tenth. What I'm going to do is recognize that I don't know this height, but I have a right triangle right here with one side being 1 and then the hypotenuse being 3. So I'm going to call this my C, and I'm going to call this my B, and then this would be my A. A squared plus B, 1 squared, equals 3 squared. Solve for A. And 3 squared minus 1 squared is going to be 8. So A would be the square root of 8. Cool. So now that would be my height. This base would have a length of 5. This base would have a length of 3. So it's going to be 1/2 times height times the sum of the bases. The height of square root of 8. And what I should do is simplify this. Now the square root of 8 is equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, which is equal to square root of 4 is 2. And square root of 2 can't simplify that. So I'm going to call this height 2 square root of 2. So when I plug it into my equation, 1/2 times height times base 1 plus base 2. My height is 2 square root of 2. And then base 1 plus base 2, well, base 1 would be 4 and 1 is 5. Base 2 is 3. And I can put these together to make 8. So I have 1/2 times 2 square root of 2 times 8. And I can multiply 1/2, 2, and 8. And I get 8. And I still have the square root of 2. So that would be my area in square centimeters. If you wanted to simplify that, 8 times the square root of 2 would be 11.3. Either way, same thing. Number 23. Okay, so what I see is I have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So the short side is going to be S. The longest side would be 2S. And this one would be S times the square root of 3. All right, so if 2S is 8, then S is equal to 4. That's what my short side will be. And then the side opposite my 60-degree angle is the short side times the square root of 2. So that would be 4 square root of 2. All right, so now I have my full length. I have so that's my base 1. And then my base 2 would be 9. As you can see, if this part is 9, then this part is. And my height is 4. I have everything I need. What I'm going to do is add 9 and 4 square root of 2. And that's for my base 1. So area is equal to 1/2 times the height times base 1 plus base 2. For my base 1, 9 plus 4 square root 2 is equal to 14.66. My base 1, or base 2, excuse me, is 9. Still have 1/2 times height, which is 4. So I'm going to add these, multiply by 4, multiply by 1/2. And I get an area of Let me check my work again here. And I get an area of 47.3 square feet. Okay, one more to go here. Okay, so if I draw this height in, I know this base is a total of 2.1. This base up here, that would be my base 1 or base 2, however you want to think of it. And then I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And a 45, 45, these would be the short sides. And this would be whatever the short side is times the square root of 2. Now, what I'm going to do to figure out what this short side would be is set short side times the square root of 2, equal to 1.7. Then I'm going to divide by square root of 2 on both sides. And 1.7 divided by the square root of 2 is equal to 1.2. So the short side, or my height right here, is equal to 1.2. And then I can use that as my height. So area equals 1/2 times the height times the sum of the bases. My height, I'm using 1.2. Base 1 is 2.1. Base 2 is 0.9. Add these up, multiply by 1.2, and then multiply by 1/2. And you should get an area of 1.8, and that would be in square meters. And I believe that is all, folks.